It's about 6 o'clock in the morning, December 29th, and there's a full-on storm raging outside, but it's kind of handy in a weird way because it allows me to test out my little shack to see how dry it is, and so far, fingers crossed, it's dry. It's been raining, well, constantly for a good probably 18 hours. Now it's really ramped up and we're in the middle of a storm. So the shack seems to be dry as a bone. Righto, chimney's almost finished. I think it's looking ace. Now the next thing is to get these slates here. Just mixed up a bucket of cob down there, and then gonna go round with cob and then lay on the slates in a sort of like fish scale pattern, so they all sort of overlap and all the water runs off all round, and so the inside doesn't get too wet. So rock and roll.
Young man, wild man, free man, tree man, green man, clean man, he's running wild. Heart lost, tears drop, rainfall, eyes up, love lost, paths crossed, she's in his mind. Dreams of those days by your side. Freedom, this man can't be tied. Dreamtime, nighttime, stars shine so bright. Firelight inside cleans up his mind. Sunshine, eyes wide, daylight, your eyes. She wakes, he smiles, she's in his arms. Heartbeat so close to mine. Dreams of those days by your side. Young man, wild man, free man, tree man, green man, clean man, he's running wild. Sunshine, eyes wide, daylight, your eyes. She wakes, he smiles, she's in his arms. Heartbeat so close to mine. Dreams of those days by your side. Heartbeat so close to mine. Dreams of those days by your side.
Right, now the next thing to do is make a more stiff load of cob and put it underneath there, basically throw it at it. But that'll do for now. I'll wait for this lean stuff to dry now, wait for it all to dry in, give it a couple of days. Don't think that's going to be a permanent solution, but it's a solution for now. It'll stop the rain coming in. Well, just stop that cob getting washed out basically, which I don't want. I want it to set solid, and once it's gone rock hard it'll be fine, but it needs a bit of time just to go really hard. But we'll see. I might make up a timber frame over the top of that with those slates, and use the slates there and hang like a little pitched roof over the top of it. Something along those lines. I'm not really sure yet, but we'll see. Here we have a big ball of clay, which I've sort of processed it to get it like that. It came out of the river as like really hard, solid clay. So I had to soak it in water till it went soft, and then crush it down and mash it up and let all the water settle, and then drain the water off the top, and then I put it into, then I mushed it all together into a ball and left it on this board inside a plastic bag, and it's been in there for a couple of months now. So that is really, really good clay. So I'm going to try and make a utensils pot, because I've got all my utensils all over the place and it's a bit messy in here. So I need a utensils pot. So that's my mission for today, making a clay pot and firing it in the fire. But because I'm going to do it all sort of, this is primitive-ish today, I'm going to try and light a fire with a bow drill. Now, I luckily grabbed a few bits of sycamore the other day and just left them on the windowsill, so they're quite dry. But I need a hearth board for the bottom part of it. Now let's go outside. Put the curtain out of the way. And look at the ground condition. Sodden. So good luck in finding a dry piece of wood. But we've got the whole forest over here to search. So that's my first mission, is to try and find a dry piece of sycamore. Game on. Here is the piece of sycamore I just found. See, it was dead. It's hanging out of another tree. There's some bark still on it. That piece is particularly dry. Underneath the bark is damp. So once I chop this and split it and then take off the outer layers, I'll just be left with the middle. Hopefully the middle will be fairly dry, and if it's not, I'm just going to stuff it down my socks, in my boot or in my belt, and go and chop some wood for half an hour. By the time I've chopped wood, that'll be ready. That's going to be my hearth board. Just going to clean it up a bit so it sits nice and flat. So I've got my hearth board, a spindle, and another spindle maybe, but we'll see. if that one fails, I've got that one. I've got my old bows here, but I think they're kind of too short. 3 foot I think you want, and that's about 1.5 foot. So I'm going to have one a lot longer so I can get a bigger stroke. So I'm going to get rid of these and now go and find a bow and prep the hearth board. Here is the completed bow drill set. This was a piece of holly. Look how long it is now. It's really long. So I should be able to get a really nice long stroke, whereas the other ones I was using were about a foot shorter than that. So that's about, I don't know, 600 to 800 centimeters, millimeters. And then I've got Sycamore, which is fairly dry, and this Sycamore, which was off that piece down there, which I've just split, and then just try and make it as flat as possible so when it goes on the deck it sits kind of nicely and doesn't wobble around. But I'm going to have a lot of weight on it, so whatever way it goes, I might have to do a bit of work on that, take that off there. I'll do that now. And this is what you want for your cup. That goes on there. And this is an egg cup, which I found in a charity shop. I think I paid 10p for it. I've created a divot there with my knife. Now I've just got to make it a bit bigger. Right. You temper at the end of that. Keep some of that soot. And then just do it out. So now I've got to cut a groove in here. As you can see, just taking the V out. Now I'm going to give it another shot. Oh, I couldn't find a dry leaf, so I'm using a piece of wood, just a split piece of wood. So hopefully this is going to work. I haven't done one of these in a long time, and they can be quite tricky. Now another thing I'm going to do to contain that ember, I'm just going to put a little backboard, so hopefully it will contain the ember. This is all just me making stuff up, so I don't really know. Right, let's go. Now I've got this bit here, this bit of holly it was. It's a bit big, it's a bit heavy. I think I might get tired out really quick, but it's a good size. Let's see how it goes. Right, a mistake can be to mess around with this. but it's smoking. So the old adage is, where there's smoke, there's fire. So I've just got to let it smoke now until it catches. It'll catch by itself, and it will make a cherry. And when you've got the cherry, you've got it. Now I've got I smashed my tinder bundle over. So I'm just going to use basically bracken and feather sticks because these feather sticks are really good, and if you can get those going, you've won, because that's going to be a really like hot heat in the heart of the thing. So there we go, that'll ember up now and cherry up. So at this point, you know, you're in chilled out mode. There it goes, it's cherried up right now. There's no point in rushing this at all. Like, in fact, I'm probably better off transport this into the fire, the whole thing. On a bow drill. On a very, very wet day. Like, alright, I'm indoors, but I could have made a dry surface outdoors. But that to me, it's January the 2nd. It's been raining every day for the last probably 2 months. It's rained every day, like heavily, torrential rain. And I managed to do a bow drill fire. And I didn't even use my bloody tinder. I don't think this bracken's very good tinder, you see. It's alright. I don't really rate it. I couldn't find much tinder, you see, so I just thought I'd go with feather sticks and try that method, which worked. Obviously a lot of hard work. Right, my reflections on that friction fire. 1, you want a very long bow drill. Bow, sorry. Works loads better. 2, the cup needs to be very good. The other best ones I've used are limpet shells, really good. 2 limpet shells you want, because 1 acts as a barrier for the heat that builds up and burns your hands in the end, so you need 2 of them to stop the heat. Another thing, the spindle needs to be quite fat, like thicker than my thumb, and the hearth board is pretty chunky. And as you saw, I did it first attempt. That was my first attempt. 1 hole, 1 attempt, 1 fire. Simple as that. And the other things you learn about it is just be patient. Once you've got that ember and you see the smoke, don't mess around with it. Just leave it and let it smoke and let it smoke. And eventually it will cherry up. And once you've got the cherry, basically, if you fail from there, like I almost did, because I didn't have the decent tinder, every bit of tinder material was soaking wet. The grass soaking, so I had to use feather sticks and coax it and get them alight and put little bits of stick on, and eventually got it going, and now I've got a nice fire. But yeah, it's the 2nd of January, it's been raining constantly. It hammered it down last night, and I picked that piece of wood up, that hearth board, from down by the river. So it can be done, even when it's hammering it down with rain. All you need is a piece of string and you can light a fire, and a knife. Piece of string and a knife. What's in your pockets, Mr. Baggins, eh? String, knife, no. Anyway, yeah. looks a bit rough at the moment, but the clay is really wet and I've ran out, so that's as high as it's going to go. So I'm putting it by the fire to dry it out, and then I'm going to, once it's a bit stiffer, get some water and smooth the outside and smooth the inside, and then let it set by the fire. And then tonight I'll put it in the embers once it's pretty hard and properly fire it. With the primitive theme, made a flatbread, and now I'm just going to chuck it on the embers. Well, bread making was a fail, and my pot's a bit of a fail as well, so apart from the bow drill, it's been a bit of a failure today. See, the middle isn't cooked. I left it on the embers too long. I'll still go in the middle. Gone for a smaller bread this time. I'm not going to take my eye off it so long, and hopefully it will cook through to the centre a lot quicker because it's a lot thinner. So that's a bit better. Bit burnt on the other side, but not bad. Right on, dinner is served. Tomatoes, bacon and sausage with me ember cooked flatbreads. Yeah, not the best meal I've ever cooked, but it's all a bit experimental with the flatbreads. It worked out alright. I mean, that side's black as you're at, but never mind. And my pot is somewhere in the middle of that fire, and I'm not hoping for any type of success whatsoever because I just heard it explode, and I looked in the fire and half the side of the pot is just exploded out, so it's just blew up. I think I put it in too soon. It wasn't dry enough. I'd been drying it out all night and it looked pretty dry, and it was, you know, it had changed colour to that white sort of colour. I thought, alright, that'll do. Other things it could have been, the timber I used was very wet because everything's soaking wet, so next time I think I'm going to use drier timber. I'll keep on experimenting with these pot making business, pottery, because it interests me. I've just been through the embers of my fire, and there's my pot. Complete failure. It's really biscuity. I don't know what I did wrong. I haven't got a clue. Might have put it in when it was wet, but I'm not an expert in these things. I was just experimenting with it. Here's my latest spoon. Quite chuffed with it. It's really basic, but it's alright. I've gone for the thinner sort of bowl on this one. It's really quite thin. Feels really nice to touch. It's a left-hander. It's just the way the wood went. It had that sort of bend on it. Quite happy with that one. I'll be doing a few more. Oh, this mushroom. That's fully weird. Today's tale is about a man named Dadan. Now Dadan was the leader of his tribe, and he had lots of magical items which he would use to keep everyone happy and the land fertile. He had a great cauldron in which it never emptied. There was always porridge in the cauldron. It was his favourite meal, was porridge. He'd always be, every morning he'd have his porridge and set him up for the day. He also had an orchard with fruit trees that were always ripe in any seasons. They would always be ripe. There'd always be fruit. He also had 2 pigs that would always give him a litter of 12 pigs. And as soon as they'd finished eating that herd of pigs or whatnot, then another would be ready or whatever. They'd give birth, and it was just a time of plenty. Now there was a witch who grew jealous of all this plenty and decided to put a curse on the land, and she took away all of his powers and all of his wealth and prosperity, and he was forced to live in a cave with just his wife and his son. And she had wiped his memory of everything, so he didn't remember what happened, but his son did. And now his son was quite angry about all this stuff. As he grew up, he realised that when he was young they had lots of plenty, there was bounty everywhere, there was plenty, and now there was nothing. So one day he said, right, I'm going to go and work out what's happened to the land. So off he went, and he's going down the road, and he started chatting to a few people, and he spoke to this one old wise man. He said, I'm wondering what happened to the land. And he said, oh, tales have it that a witch from an island just off the coast cursed this land 15 years ago when you were only a young boy. He said, yeah, I remember there was an orchard here, and there was always meat on the table, and there was always porridge for breakfast, but we live in hardship now, and we live in a cave. And he said, if you want to seek wisdom and the way to solve your problems, you need to go to the highest mountain in the land, and before you go you need to speak to the archdruid. So off he went, and he spoke to the druid, who was very good friends with his father. And he said, here, take this wand, this magic wand, with you, and when you get to the highest point, hold it high in the air and scream the name of wisdom. And in this culture the name of wisdom was Buddha. That was their word for wisdom. And so he went up to the mountain, and he held his wand, his magic wand, and he shouted out, Buddha! And a big lightning bolt came down. It just missed him, and it hit a big rock, and it carved a face into the rock, and the rock started to speak to him. And he said, if you want to kill the witch, I'll give you magical powers that will allow you to kill this witch. You need to transform yourself into a seagull so she won't see you coming, and then you need to poison her. And he's like, oh, alright, okay. So the talking stone transformed him into a seagull and fitted him out with some poison. So off he flew to this island where the witch lived. Now the witch was kind of cunning and crafty, and she was always on the alert, but she didn't see him coming because he mingled in with the rest of the seagulls. But he was thinking, how am I supposed to get this poison into her cup? I've got to fly in through the window, drop it in her cup, and fly out without her seeing me. This is going to be impossible. So he decided, he still had the magic wand, and he had this vial of poison. So he decided to change himself back into a man.
and he'd be better off sneaking in. So he went to a quiet place on the island and changed back into a man. And when everyone was asleep at night, he crept in to a palace, really quiet like, you know, and went into the kitchens, and there he hid himself in a cupboard. Now, the witch wouldn't cook her own food, she'd have slaves and whatnot to cook food for him. So when her meal was being prepared, he just dripped the poison on top of the meal. And the waitress went out, gave it to the witch. She ate it and was poisoned and died. So he changed himself back into a seagull and flew back up to the mountain and said, right, I've killed the witch. And he's like, alright, that's good. But now you have to go and retrieve your father's possessions, which are in a secret cave underneath the witch's palace. So he went back on a boat and retrieved all the items that she had stolen from him, his 2 pigs, his cauldron, and his great big club that he used to club people with. And he took them back, shipped them back to the mainland. And when he got home and his father saw his club, his memory came back to him instantly. And then he saw his cauldron, and he just remembered, I really like porridge. And there it was, his pigs. And so he tucked into a nice bowl of porridge, and everyone lived happily ever after.